As you may have heard before when I give a public speech or while you are listening to my podcast, I'm not a native English speaker. I come from the Flemish part from Belgium. The Flemish language is the same as the Dutch. In theory, there is no difference between Flemish and Dutch except the pronunciation. When I finished university, some professors told me I would not make it because I didn't pass my language exams. Many years later, I don't speak my mother language in my daily life anymore. I only speak French and English, the two exams I didn't pass. Oh, yeah, I do make mistakes in speaking, in writing, and yes, I do give public speeches and I do business worldwide. Even more, I do have a specific pronunciation when I speak. I have the heavy R. That's why I'm interested in finding out how important language is in business today. Does not being fluent in one language blocks your future success or not? How does the way our voice sounds affects our success? And if it does, how can we overcome this? Today, I sit down with Leonilda Renaldo. Leonilda moved from academia to business. For the past 13 years, Leonilda has supported top managers hailing from North and Central America, France, and Switzerland who want to uplevel their careers in the luxury, pharmaceutical, arts, and services industries. So, Leonilda understands the barriers managers face when they want to uplevel the way they communicate by staying true to who they are, quirks and all. What was interesting for me was her catchphrase, "Stop learning English, start speaking it." I personally know Nilda from the International Toastmasters Club in Geneva, where she was last year the club's president. So let's start to go deeper into the science of language, of voice, and how it impacts business successes. Leonilda, thank you for your time. So I'm a vivid listener to your speeches in the Toastmasters Club. Can I start with the catchphrase from your website? Stop learning English, start speaking English. What is the difference? Because we have to learn first before we can speak.
Mhm. Well, thank you, Frederick, for inviting me. Very exciting to be with you and your audience today. What do I mean by stop learning English and start speaking it? Well, actually, many people think that by learning English, they will be able to speak. But what they find along the way is that they have gotten so attached to the theory of the language that when they're faced with actually applying their knowledge, their fears come in, the perceptions, how will they be perceived? Will they be understood? Will they be ridiculed? Will they lose face? All these stories, because that's what they are, form an obstacle, a barrier to actually speaking. Learning is not your guarantee that you will be able to speak. I know it sounds absolutely nuts coming from a language coach, but I've seen it, I've lived it, and each and every time it never fails. But let's continue and see what comes up.
All right. So you're original coming from the USA. You moved to Europe around 2001, and I'm original from Belgium, living almost 12 years in a French-speaking region of Switzerland. And my French is not as good as yours. And I'm not alone. So how come you speak French so fluently? What was or is your secret?
Hmm. Secrets. Ooh, I love secrets. Well, the first secret is that actually I was born speaking Spanish. I was born into um, Dominican family that immigrated from the Dominican Republic in the late 60s. And language was always a big deal in my family, meaning that even though I was born in the US and raised in the US, the moment I walked into the threshold of my house, it was forbidden for me to speak English. So it was like I was in a Dominican country where only Spanish was spoken. At the time, I really hated that. It was really uncomfortable because it's almost like I had to leave my American way of being at the door and then become this Dominican youngster. But now looking back, I'm so grateful to my parents for pushing that. And that helped me a lot in learning French. So the secret is has many layers. The first layer is love, the love of language, the curiosity of the language. I was born again bilingual. That's a little secret, but it's not a reason for it. Then I met a young man. We never dated or anything like that, so don't get any ideas. But I met this young man. I was 15 at the time. And this guy came in from Paris. So a Haitian guy, so a black guy speaking French. And, let's just put everything in context. I was in Michigan, rural Michigan, Southwest Michigan, where anything other than what we would call Wonder white bread, was exotic. So I already was exotic because I'm a black woman speaking Spanish. So that was kind of weird. Then you had some Mexicans, a couple of Mexicans. So anybody who wasn't white or black was a Mexican. And so when I meet this young man who's black speaking French, okay, he was a complete alien for me. But I was so curious. Wow, he had such a lovely accent speaking in English. He dressed to kill. And he had this way about him that was very appealing. And I saw the way other people perceived him as well. So already I was building a story of what language can do in a positive way. And he started teaching me French. And I would ask him, okay, how do I say this? How do I say kiss? How do I say I love chocolate? How do I say, anyway. And so that was my first teacher of French. And from that day on, I had promised myself that I would learn this language. And that's exactly what I did at age 19. I went and did a year abroad and landed not too far away from Geneva, as a matter of fact, and learned the language head on, determined to learn this language, to not only learn it, but to master it and speak it, no matter what the accent was, no matter what the grammar mistakes were. But I would say, almost obsessed with the language and curious about the culture. And mind you, in this year abroad, there were quite a few Americans. So I could have just stayed with my American classmates and left French to only the classroom. But I saw that I would miss out on a lot. A lot happens outside of the classroom. And that's what I was determined to find out. And how did I do that? Making mistakes, getting dirty, getting, really pulling up my sleeves and daring to speak to people outside of the classroom, going to the bakery, stumbling upon words, especially with numbers. That was a complete nightmare. The pronunciation of the U in French is just horrific. And what I discovered was people who were so happy that I was curious about learning their language. And not only were they happy, but they were willing to help me. And every time I would go to that bakery, there they were with that big smile and saying, okay, you don't say tu, you say tu. You don't say va, you say vous. And they were, making light of it, and I received it as a light correction, not as something to ridicule. I was 20 years old at the time, so old enough to start building a complex, because complexes and stories are built after the age of 12. And here I was enjoying the ride.
Yeah, you said something interesting. It was like people are happy when you try to speak their languages.
Mm.
And I had this with my Russian family. When I go to Russia, I don't speak Russian, but those little words, say thank you, hello, or in my case, asking for a beer, in Russian, even with the wrong pronunciation, then you see people smiling.
Mm.
And it opens up immediately the doors, even if you speak only 3, 4 words.
Absolutely.
But then there is research that indicates that the sound of your voice or the
Mm.
pronunciation strongly influenced how you are viewed.
Mm.
So, in fact, there is a study by a professional communication agency, no, an analytics company called Quantified Impressions.
Mm.
And they say the sound of a speaker's voice can matter twice as much as his or her content.
Mm.
If this is true, people like me with my strong accent, we are in trouble. So my first question to you is, do you agree with that statement of that agency? Do you see this as you, of course, as a professional language coach, that the voice and the accent that I
Mm.
have or other people have, is there an influence on how people see it? And is it really more important than the content? What's your point of view on that?
Absolutely. I completely agree with this study. And again, it's something that I see every day. The voice, and you as a fellow Toastmaster will appreciate this as well. It's what we train on with vocal variety, and the volume and the pitch and the rate and the tone. There's so much in the tone of what we say. What I see happening is that people use, it's interesting. I go back to the stories that we tell ourselves. Some people think, or we think, that by minimizing the voice, lowering the voice, or mumbling, that we can disguise the mistake, or um, a technique to, oh, that way they won't see that I'm making a mistake, or that way I'll just blend in with the crowd. It works to a certain extent. It has its limits, because at some point you'll have to be clear. The person that you have in front of you will have to understand what it is that you're saying. It can make a difference. It can crash a deal, or it can make the deal. So how, in what sense can you use your voice? The voice communicates confidence. The voice can communicate conviction. The voice communicates um, your understanding and interest. And as I was saying earlier, when when you speak to a native speaker, their language, they're happy to hear. So there's already an opening for you to come in. If you lower that voice, or if you hide it somehow by disguising it, the openness will no longer be there. If anything, they're going to scrutinize what you're saying. Um, the the receptiveness will be tightened. It will be constricted, and therefore that constriction you'll interpret as well. So you'll close up even more. So if you would, it's a vicious cycle of the more you open and dare and become vulnerable, because that's really what it is, the more open the other person will be to hearing you and making an effort to understanding you. So if you hide that by lowering the volume and mumbling your words, it's going to communicate lack of confidence. It's going to confirm the stories, the false stories that you're telling yourself. And you'll come into this vicious cycle that will be very hard to come out of. So again, volume, tone, pitch, rate are super important when it comes to speaking a different language. Yeah. Did I answer your question, Frederick?
Yeah, yes, yes. It's I'm listening, and so this is what I agree. If I go to the bakery, I go to the bar, the restaurant, and I try to speak the other language, and I speak clear, even with my mistakes or with my accent, people will be open. But I have to agree that when I have to make phone calls, cold phone calls,
Mm.
I
Oh,
feel sometimes anxious. Yeah,
oh
certainly
yes.
in my French, because I have this typical r from the as a Flemish guy. And I'm always wondering how the other person on the other side, because he can't even see my movements with my hands. They can't see my way I'm presenting myself. He just hear my voice as the first thing he hears about me.
Absolutely.
Are and I'm sure I'm not the only one listening who has that problem, because that's one of the stories we always have to learn in sales courses, like cold calling and getting you into the mindset and so on. Do you have any tips how we can start overcoming this anxious feeling
Mm,
when
mm,
it comes to cold calling and when people can't see you, like on a phone? Do you have any
mm, mm,
tips?
mm. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I would say that first of all, I appreciate that question because it's a big one. It's a big one, and it's why a lot of people start their language, or when they want to challenge their language learning, they do phone lessons to develop your ear and again the voice. It all goes back to the voice, being clear with the voice. Second thing I would say is, if you're doing cold calling, it supposes that you already have a certain level of French in your case, Frederick. So if you have a beginner level, of course, please take lessons before uh, making a phone call, if it causes that much anxiety. If you're okay with it, fine. Just go with it. Go with the flow. I encourage that as much as possible. Just daring. Before daring, I would say come clean with yourself. Be honest with yourself, and be honest with the person you have on the other line, and say, bear with me. I'm still, mastering, aiming to master the language. If there are certain numbers or details that you don't understand, I'm happy to send an email. And you'll find again that the person will be open. If you find that the person is being critical, which I really doubt. But there are certain people that are a bit hard, who have a hard heart, I would say. But if ever that were the case, then double check, always double check, always rephrase. So what you mean is that, or if I understood correctly, or to paraphrase, sorry, what you just said, or I've understood this. Is that correct on your side? So it's a communication, a conversation is a transaction. I give you and I receive, and vice versa. You give me and I receive, or something along those lines. You get the point, Frederick. And what I would say to your listeners, when engaging on a phone conversation, be clear with yourself. What is your intention in making this phone call? Is it to be understood and to understand? Place that intention first. You'll find that when you place the intention, when you're intentional about what you want to achieve in this transaction, the ego will remove itself a little bit more, because it's really the ego. It's really that voice, that inner critic that is making it so constrictive for you to get that message out. You're so worried that the person won't understand. But what's your point? What do you want to say? What do you want to communicate? And what do you want to receive? And at that point, make it clear. Make it clear for yourself and make it clear for your listener. And at that point, you'll find that the person will say, "Oh, no worries," or maybe they'll even offer to speak your language, or you'll come to some form of an agreement, because people are not as cruel as we think they are. So make an ally out of the person you have on the phone, and always rephrase, check for understanding, check yourself, check your volume, check your clarity, check your tone, your pitch. It matters whether it's on the phone or face to face. And I promise you, the result will be different.
Because you just confirmed one of my previous podcasts. It was like dating techniques for salespeople, or the other way around.
Yeah.
It's like, I come in, if you go to the bar, me as a man, see a woman, I'll go to that woman, say, "You want to have sex with me?" She will smash me in the face. It's like when you make a phone call, even if it's not your language, make sure that they understand the concept. Create that link, and then you can go further. And like you said, they will be more open.
Absolutely.
So I will keep that also in mind.
Yes.
Not to get
Yes.
smashed in my face.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
I heard there is a story that you helped a French guy who was not speaking very well English, and now he's in Hollywood. Is that true, or is that?
All right. Thank you. You just enabled a vision. Thank you for that. That was a video. Yes, I was inspired by French actor Omar Sy, who wasn't very good with English growing up. He didn't speak it very well and despised lessons and just didn't make a big deal out of it. And destiny would have it that he would end up in Hollywood making American movies alongside big American actors, of influencers in cinema, in American cinema. How did he do it? He fell in love with the language. He fell in love with the American culture and the promises it has for movie stars. and he worked really hard. I mean, he had a tutor come to his house 2 hours a day, every day. He would go out to well, we don't really have bakeries in the US, but he would go out and speak with the people. And he could do that because he wasn't really known in California, so he could freely roam the streets of California. And he worked his behind. He worked his ass off. I don't know if we could say ass in your
In my podcast, you
podcast.
can.
We can. So yeah, he worked his ass off like it was going out of style. And this Omar C is really incredible because he realized that what he wanted uh, above anything else was to communicate. He wanted to speak to people. He was there initially for 3 years. He said, okay, let's just come to the US for 3 years. He wasn't planning on acting right away because he was honest with himself. He said, look, I can't speak English right now. So let me just learn it and see what life holds for me. He learned the language, he practiced it. He wanted to communicate. And the more he communicated, the more he learned the language and started mastering it. Opportunities came. They literally landed on his lap. Literally. I mean, I researched this man, and I was really taken back by his approach. And it's one that I really aim to instill in my clients, that you really have to know what your intention is. Is it to communicate? Is it to look better than your colleague because you can do your R's in English? Is it, what is it? What do you want to obtain in learning the language? Because once your intention is to communicate and be relatable and be approachable and be curious and dare, opportunities literally land. Opportunities for what, you might ask? Opportunities to keep speaking, opportunities to expand in your language, in your target language. And not only there, you'll find opportunities for things you didn't even imagine were possible. And that's exactly what happened with Omar C. I mean, this guy, he was, mind you, he was known in France, but again, American cinema, there's, for people have to be extremely, extremely curious and very well read to even consider watching a French film in French. So mainstream American cinema, he wasn't known. He wasn't known. And there he was, acting alongside Bradley Cooper, filming with Ron Howard. Ron Howard, mind you, okay? Really, Harrison Ford. Anyway, the long story short, setting your intentions is big. It's big.
That was, of course, it was a very high goal. Like you said, French movie from cinema to US cinema. If a person like me or someone expat somewhere around the world is really interested in becoming a better English speaker or a better French speaker, and he or she commits to the goal, not to become like a star in a Hollywood series, but like for their own work and so on, what are the expectations? How long does it take to see the first results? Are we talking, can we see results in days, weeks, years? Hopefully not, but what you see with your clients, of course, everybody is different. Everybody has another learning curve, but when can we see the first results? if you take it seriously, whatever goal you have?
Hmm. Well, it could go as quickly as the first day. Yes, I see your eyes are like, woo, like Tex Avery, right? Like, is that possible? Oh my goodness. It is. It is. How? The mindset. It's the mindset, Frederick. When you know why it is that you want to learn a target language, when it's very clear and you are willing to stop defending your limitations, it can go very quickly. What does that mean, you may say? What do you mean defending your limitations? I mean, okay, a typical sentence. Oh, Leonilda, my accent is horrible. Nobody can understand what I'm saying. Just the other day, I went to New York. Well, I would say the other year because there wasn't much traveling this year. But last year, I went to New York and I asked the guy at the restaurant where the toilets were. And he said, "No, madam, we don't have donuts." So the guy misunderstood. You see how horrible my accent is. And so I can't speak English because my accent is so bad and nobody can understand. So you keep defending that limitation. My accent is bad. Nobody can understand. I have a rotten accent. That perpetuates you having a terrible accent. But the day you say, I really want to speak with New Yorkers because they sound so cool, because the New York minute is a fast minute. So I want to be able to get my point across to a New Yorker, to a Londoner, to an Aussie. I want to be able to communicate and I want to be able to know what it is that makes their culture so exciting and invigorating and revitalizing. What is it? What's their secret? Okay, there you're no longer defending your limitation. There, your mindset is now not on what you can't do, but on what you want to do, on what you can do. And magically, I would say, your brain opens and is more receptive to you being corrected, because there's that too. Some people don't like to be corrected. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can.
Yeah. And that is why I say stop learning and start speaking, because you tell yourself, hey, I knew my verbs. I mean, I knew my irregular verbs left, right, and center. Why is she now telling me that I'm not using the present perfect correctly? You see, so there you're constricting yourself. The more you open your mind and you change, you shift the way you perceive language and what you can do with it, the quicker you will absorb. You will be a sponge. That is the difference between children and adults when it comes to learning a language.
Oh, it was interesting. So for me, the conclusion is, because we're having this podcasts, we see videos, many people, non-native English or French-speaking people are the host, like me. But it comes clear that language should not be the barrier. You just have to start using it. But also, if you're taking yourself serious, you don't only have to offer great content, you also have to work on your voice, the ways of your pronunciation. But this can all be learned as long as it's in your mindset to say, I want to become a better speaker. This-
Absolutely.
Is that not the way we say for people to come to Toastmasters also to become a better speaker?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I will start working today because you answered one question. I was thinking always if I start working on my English or my French, it will still take weeks, even though I have all the base. but you can say it's from tomorrow. So I will try to make sure that the restaurants understand my name correctly already. That would be a good.
Absolutely. And if it's important for you, Frederick, that people pronounce your name correctly and understand it correctly, just say
Cu-
so.
Currently, I'm making the joke. You can call me Cedric if you want, but
There you go.
and then it's like what?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it, Frederick. It's making light of the situation.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree.
Absolutely.
So to become better speaker and learning at the voice, the intonation, the pronunciation, and so on, Toastmasters is one. They can also work with a language coach like you. So
Absolutely.
where can people find you? I will put it also in the description and the footnotes, but
Mm,
where can they contact you if they have
mm.
questions or want to work with you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you, Frederick. Again, if they want to contact me, they can reach me on YouTube, LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn, on my website. So the website, I believe, is leonildarenaldo.com, just very simple. Alternatively, leodynamics.com, either one works. You'll find that if you go on the website, you'll get quick access to the most popular idiomatic expressions in English. And if you're learning French or public speaking, you can drop me a line in the contact form, because I also train for public speaking, for presentation skills, French learning, and English learning, of course.
Yes. Thank you, Leonilda. It was interesting. I learned a few new things, even though I know you about your Spanish.
Yes, yes,
And
it's such a treat.
so, and I'm going to ask also the listeners and the people who are watching on YouTube to tell in the comments what were their positive or negative impacts of their voice and their language
Mm,
on their
mm.
career or business. We want to see if it's and how they solved it or not solved it, and then we'll
Oh,
see.
that
We
would
go
be
from there.
very interesting.
So put it in the comments. Thank you, and we'll see each other very soon. No?
Yes, we will at the next meeting, I
I
hope.
I hope, yes.
Absolutely.
I hope.
Thank you so much to your listeners. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm wishing the best for everybody in their desire to learn a second language or third or fourth or whatever, how many number of languages. And the most important language is I would say, the language that we use for ourselves, our own self-talk. So thank you.